Way out in the country, a man lived alone in a cabin at the edge of a dark, dense forest. The man's name was Lewis, and he was a very fat man. On one eerily calm summer evening, Lewis sat in his favorite recliner, reading a book and eating his favorite snacks. The fat man's dog, Buster, lied quietly on the comfy rug in front of the recliner. Buster was an old German shepherd, but a very good dog indeed. He was extremely loyal and protective of Lewis, and the fat man had appreciated every year they had spent together. So, Lewis and Buster enjoyed the evening. They had left the cabin's door wide open to let in fresh air and the summer sounds of crickets and bullfrogs from a nearby pond. Leaving the door open was the first mistake of the evening. Suddenly, Buster sat up and let out a low growl. Lewis became concerned. "What is it, boy?" he asked the dog. Buster's growling intensified. Lewis closed the book he was reading and put it on the end table. He then leaned forward and asked, "Is something out there, buddy?" Just then, as if answering his master's question, Buster leapt forward and bolted out the open door and into the muggy summer night's air. "Hey!" Lewis shouted. "Get back here!" But it was no use. Buster was long gone. Lewis flapped a hammy hand at the door and went back to reading his book. "He'll be back," Lewis laughed to himself. But then a few minutes passed, and then a few minutes more. Buster still hadn't returned. Lewis began to worry. The dog had never been gone that long. Never. Lewis was just about to squirm his way out of the recliner to go investigate, but just then, Buster returned. The old German shepherd came through the door and limped slowly to his master. Lewis, horrified, noticed that Buster left droplets of blood on the rug in front of the recliner. "Oh no!" he cried. "What happened to you, Buster?" The injured dog crept to his master and whimpered softly as he put his head on Lewis's lap. Something was terribly wrong. Lewis reached down and scooped up his loyal companion. What he saw next struck him in the heart as if pierced by a rusty arrow. Buster's entire side was plagued with bloody holes. At first, Lewis assumed that his dog had been shot. "Who did this to you?" he screamed in anger. "This isn't right!" Buster was dying before his eyes. Lewis lived too far away from any type of help. There was nothing he could do for the poor animal. Buster gathered up his last bit of strength and looked into his master's eyes one final time before sputtering out his last breath. "No!" Lewis yelled. He felt the animal's warm blood oozing into his sweatpants, which infuriated him even more. The fat man hollered towards the open door. "I'm gonna find you, and you're gonna pay for what you did to my poor Buster!" But then an odd thought crossed Lewis's mind. He hadn't heard any gunshots. The man shuddered, then thought to himself, if a gun didn't do this, then what did? A moment passed. Then Lewis's question was answered. A huge buck with its head lowered emerged from the open door. Lewis gasped. The tips of the deer's antlers were soaked with dripping crimson, and a nasty, white, foamy mess covered the animal's entire mouth. The horrifying reality struck Lewis like a Camaro doing 120 miles an hour. Buster had been killed by a rabid buck. Fear welled up in the fat man's sizable gut as the deer stared at him with wide, glossy, twitching eyes. crazy eyes. Louis was next. He had to think of something, and fast. The bathroom was the only room in the cabin with a door, and it was only a few steps away. But would he make it there before the buck gored him with those bloody antlers? He had to give it a shot. The bathroom was his only hope. Without making any sudden movements, Louis slowly slid his hands under Buster's dead body. As terrible as it sounded, he had to toss the carcass at the buck, and then make a run for the bathroom door if he wanted to survive. The rabid deer stomped its foot angrily, as if it had somehow sensed Louis's plan. Louis was out of time. The buck lunged toward the fat man holding the dead dog. There was only one thing Louis could do to protect himself. He had to use Buster's body as a shield. The buck continued to charge. Adrenaline rushed through Louis's body as he gripped handfuls of the dog's flesh and fur, then slammed the bloody carcass into the oncoming antlers. The deer wasn't expecting that, and responded by thrashing his head from side to side, furious that his previous victim had been used against him. Louis struggled with the buck. Blood and gore burst from Buster's body as it was torn apart. Louis screamed in horror as the battle ensued, the buck pushing and thrashing while Louis desperately kept hold of the rapidly disintegrating carcass. Now, being a fat man sometimes had its advantages. In this particular case, he could use his massive size as a weapon, especially with adrenaline coursing through his veins. Louis sucked in a deep breath, then twisted with every ounce of strength he could muster. And it worked. The surprised buck was forced to the floor, flopping on its side with poor Buster's body still clung to its antlers. Louis seized the moment and jumped out of his chair, then barreled toward the bathroom. And guess what? He made it. Louis slammed the door shut and even locked it, as if afraid that the rabies had somehow bestowed upon the buck a bizarre form of arcane intelligence. Outside the door, the buck had regained its footing and shook off the wet, meaty mess that plagued its antlers. Inside the bathroom, Louis sat down on the toilet and waited. There was really nothing else he could do. A few quiet moments passed, then a few more. Louis wondered if the deer had simply given up. Maybe it went back outside to hunt down an easier target, he thought. But Louis was wrong. Dead wrong. Boom, boom, boom. The buck pounded on the door. Boom, boom, boom. Louis covered his ears with his hands. The horrific situation was getting the best of him. Boom, boom, boom. Tears began to well in the fat man's eyes. He screamed, "Stop! Just stop! I can't take this anymore!" But then, the pounding did stop. Louis removed his hands from his ears and heard the animal's hooves clapping against the cabin's wooden floorboards as it explored the rest of the cabin. Maybe it would finally just leave. Louis exhaled a sigh of relief and waited. After a few moments, all was quiet. Did it leave? Louis silently questioned himself. How long should I wait? I can't sit in here forever, he thought. Another few minutes passed. Nothing. And then a few more. Still nothing. Louis stood up from the toilet. He decided to go and take a peek. Taking silent steps, the fat man moved toward the door. He then flipped the lock with his hand and reached for the door handle. It was the moment of truth. Boom, boom, boom. Another round of powerful smashes against the door. The buck had never left. Shocked, Lewis quickly stepped away from the door. More pounding and more pounding. No, no, no! Lewis cried in horror as a hoof suddenly blasted through the wood. The door wasn't holding. Lewis had to get out of there. He went to the bathroom's only window and opened it up. But dread overwhelmed the fat man as he suddenly realized he was too large to squeeze through. "This can't be happening," he wailed. The door was almost finished. Lewis scanned the bathroom for a weapon, but the only thing that caught his eye was a crusty old toilet plunger. It would simply have to do. "Come and get me, you bastard!" Lewis shouted and held the plunger high above his head. The furious buck responded by storming into the bathroom. Lewis had anticipated another antler attack, but this time he was wrong. The buck reared up just as the fat man had taken a swing with the plunger, completely missing his mark. Then, wicked hooves beat down on Lewis's chest, causing him to drop the plunger. The force of the powerful blows sent him reeling toward the bathtub. And I'm pretty sure you know what happened next. Yup. Lewis had way too much momentum. He fell over backwards into the tub. Now he was wedged in. The buck stepped forward, but there wasn't anything Lewis could do about it. He was stuck in his own bathtub with only one arm free to defend himself. Lewis's heart pounded madly in his tightly squeezed chest as the sinister animal glared down at him with dark, twitching, crazy eyes. Those awful, awful eyes. Lewis could only pray that the deer would realize that his victim had been defeated and walk away. Maybe, once the rabid animal was gone, he'd figure out a way to wriggle and squirm his way out of the tub. But those optimistic thoughts were suddenly whisked away when the buck snorted, spraying disease-ridden foam all over poor Lewis's face. The buck reared back once again, causing the fat man to squeal in fear as the hooves came crashing down upon him. Over and over, the rabid deer stamped on Lewis's head, neck, and shoulders, pounding the man deeper and deeper into the tub. Lewis tried his best to protect his face with his one free arm, but his efforts were futile at best. Pain. Terrible, searing pain whipped through Lewis's body as flesh was battered apart and bones were broken. In fact, he almost passed out from the intense flashes of agony as the buck relentlessly punished him. But then, just as quickly as the pounding had started, it stopped. Lewis watched with blood-spattered eyes as the animal finally exited the bathroom. It was over. But Lewis was still slowly bleeding to death, stuck inside the tub. "If only I could have made it through the window," he thought to himself, as the soft gurgle of blood going down the drain reminded him that his time was short. If only I could have made it through the window.